Have you ever wondered why the moments you abandoned yourself were the same moments that kept you alive? Why every time you swallowed your truth, smiled when you wanted to scream, stayed when your body begged to leave, something inside you whispered, "You have to, or you won't survive." This is the paradox of self-betrayal. It looks like weakness, but it was once your shield. It feels like shame, but it began as devotion to safety, to belonging, to love. She learned early that love could vanish like light under a door. That silence could mean punishment. That truth could cost her everything. So she became small. She learned to read the room before she spoke, to soothe others before she soothed herself. Each time she silenced her intuition, a part of her curled deeper into shadow, not because she was weak, but because the world taught her that survival required disappearance. And so she became the good girl, the pleaser, the peacemaker. But under that mask, another energy stirred, something ancient, wild, unbroken. The queen who had forgotten her crown. The feminine wound is not weakness, it is inheritance. It carries centuries of quiet compliance, of women who bartered their worth for belonging. The masculine wound, by contrast, fears loss of control, terrified of insignificance. One hides to be loved, the other dominates to feel seen. Together, they dance in a loop of projection, mistaking power for safety and submission for peace. But beneath that dynamic lies the truth. Betrayal of self is never the end of the story. It is the moment before awakening. When she begins to remember, she feels disoriented. The same gestures that once made her loved now feel suffocating. The compliments sting. The apologies feel hollow. And she wonders, if I stop pleasing, will they still stay? This is where the healing begins. In Jungian language, this is the confrontation with the shadow. The parts exiled for being too much, too angry, too loud, too needy, too wild now rise from the depths, demanding recognition. The shadow does not come to destroy her, it comes to restore her wholeness. Every suppressed no gathers power in the unconscious until it becomes a storm. Every silenced truth becomes a whisper that grows teeth. Until one day, she cannot stay silent. Not anymore. Imagine her at dinner with him. He makes a joke that cuts just enough to draw blood. She smiles, the old reflex, but this time her body rebels. Her throat tightens, her chest aches. And suddenly, she sees herself from above, a woman pretending to be fine while her soul is burning. In that instant, she understands this is not about him. It never was. It is about every moment she betrayed her own knowing to keep love intact. And something shifts. She doesn't lash out. She doesn't explain. She simply withdraws her energy, the invisible tide that once sustained him. Her silence is not compliance anymore. It is reclamation. This is the emergence of the queen archetype. Her power is not found in control, but in self-respect. She no longer trades authenticity for acceptance. She becomes the mirror, forcing others to meet themselves when they face her calm refusal to perform. For the queen, boundaries are not walls, they are thrones. She sits upon them not to rule over others, but to rule within herself. To the unhealed masculine, this feels like rejection, a loss of dominance. But to her, it is liberation. You see, the wound of self-betrayal is not healed by forgiveness alone. It is healed by self-loyalty, by choosing, again and again, not to abandon the inner voice that once kept quiet for safety. And this is the paradox. The woman who once betrayed herself to survive must now betray others' expectations to truly live. What used to be called selfishness now becomes sacred sovereignty. Ask yourself, where are you still negotiating your worth? Where do you silence your truth to keep someone else comfortable? And what would happen if, just for tonight, you refuse to shrink? Sit in that silence. Feel the weight of your own presence. Let it expand until it fills the room. That is not arrogance, that is remembrance. Because the woman who dares to stop betraying herself doesn't lose love. She redefines it. The first taste of self-loyalty feels foreign. It is both liberation and grief. Because when a woman begins to honor herself, she must also mourn the years she did not. Every smile that cost her truth, every yes that disguised a silent scream, every night she convinced herself that peace was worth the price of her boundaries. She begins to see it now, how her softness had been mistaken for permission, how her empathy had been consumed like a resource, how she had been conditioned to confuse love with endurance. It is not that she lacked strength. It is that her strength was spent on protecting others from her authenticity. In the language of Jung, this is the anima's revolt. The feminine soul, long buried beneath layer of adaptation, begins to stir. And when she does, she brings chaos. Because rebirth always does. The masculine, unhealed within her and around her, resists this uprising. It fears losing control. It fears insignificance, the terror of not being needed anymore. For centuries, both within and without, the feminine was tamed to soothe this fear. But now she no longer seeks to soothe. She seeks to see. The energy shifts. Where she once rushed to explain herself, she now lets the silence speak. Where she once sought reassurance, she now trusts her intuition. Where she once waited to be chosen, she begins to choose. In this transformation, her old patterns test her. The familiar ache returns, that deep pull to overgive, to fix, to make it right. But something in her pauses. Not everything broken requires her mending. Not every apology must come from her lips. This is where the witch archetype awakens. The witch is not evil, she is misunderstood power. She remembers what the good girl forgot. That intuition is not danger, but direction. That boundaries are not cruelty, but clarity. That truth spoken aloud is not rebellion, but resurrection. She begins to practice subtle rituals of reclamation. She speaks less but means more. She looks in the mirror and says softly, "I will not abandon you again." It sounds simple, but it is a vow that shakes generations of silence. He notices the shift before she does. Her eyes no longer plead, they observe. Her laughter no longer performs, it chooses its audience. Her presence feels untamed, unpredictable. And the part of him that fed on her compliance grows restless. He cannot name it, but he feels it, the loss of his quiet dominance. The witch's power is her discernment. She knows the difference between love that nourishes and love that consumes. She knows that when she betrays herself for connection, the bond becomes poison. So she releases it, even when her heart trembles. You might feel that trembling too. That part of you that fears being called cold, difficult, ungrateful. But ask yourself, who benefits from your guilt? Who taught you that your silence was kindness? And when did you start mistaking exhaustion for love? Self-betrayal doesn't vanish through intellect. It dissolves through embodied truth, small, radical acts of alignment. Saying no and staying calm. Pausing before explaining. Leaving the room before your boundaries are violated again. In Jungian terms, this is individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. The woman no longer divides herself to belong. She integrates the parts she once disowned. The angry one, the sensual one, the selfish one, the wise one. They return not as enemies, but as guardians. To the world, her transformation looks like rebellion. But within, it feels like return. She is not becoming someone new. She is remembering someone ancient, the self she left behind when survival demanded silence. Tonight, sit in that remembrance. Feel the pulse beneath your ribs and whisper, "I am not my fear." Let the body hear it. Because healing begins where the body finally believes it is safe to stop pretending. Every betrayal of self leaves a scar, yes, but also a map. Each scar marks a lesson in discernment, where you gave too much, where you stayed too long, where you lost yourself to keep someone else intact. Follow those scars. They point toward the throne you forgot you built. There comes a moment when silence stops being fear and becomes power. When her absence is no longer escape, but embodiment. When the energy that once rushed outward, desperate to be understood, turns inward, steady and sovereign. It is here the priestess archetype emerges. Not as an image of holiness or perfection, but as one who listens deeply to the voice beneath the noise. The priestess does not beg for clarity from others. She waits for it to rise within. Her life becomes ceremony, her solitude initiation. To the unhealed masculine, this looks like withdrawal. He feels her slipping beyond his reach, and he mistakes it for disinterest. But she has not left. She has simply stopped performing proximity. Her energy, once freely offered, is now sacred currency. She spends it only where it echoes her truth. There is beauty in the quiet rebellion of a woman who no longer seeks permission to exist as she is. And danger, too, because this kind of power cannot be controlled. It exposes illusion. It demands accountability. It forces everyone around her to decide, meet her at depth or lose her to distance. But the path to this serenity is not without fire. The more she honors her inner voice, the louder the old voices become. Who do you think you are? You're too cold. You've changed. Yes, she has. And she will again. Because growth is not betrayal, it is truth in motion. Still, there are nights when her strength feels like isolation. When the weight of awareness becomes heavy. When she wonders whether it would be easier to go back. To soften her edges, to smile a little more, to need a little less. But the soul cannot unsee what it has witnessed. Once the queen remembers her throne, she cannot return to the floor. And so she walks the in-between, the sacred tension between longing and liberation. It is here she begins to understand that her pain was never punishment, it was initiation. Every betrayal of self was an invitation to wholeness, disguised as loss. Every time she silenced her truth, the universe whispered, "How long will you abandon yourself to be loved by those who fear your power?" He comes back, of course. They always do, when the source of their validation disappears. He says she's distant, colder now. But what he really means is, she's no longer easy to control. Her eyes do not mirror his needs anymore. Her silence no longer trembles. Her calm feels like a mirror, and he cannot bear what it reflects, his own hunger for dominance disguised as love. Yet she does not punish him. That would be the old way, the wounded feminine striking back. Now she simply sees him. And in seeing him, she also sees herself, the version of her who once needed his approval to feel worthy. She sends that version love, then lets her rest. This is the heart of integration. Healing is not about erasing the past, but about reclaiming it. Each version of her, the pleaser, the witch, the queen, the priestess, becomes a constellation, each star a lesson, each light a reminder that she survived what once demanded her silence. You may feel this unfolding in yourself, too. The quiet moments when you hesitate before agreeing to something your soul resists. The pulse in your chest when you know the truth but fear speaking it aloud. That is your power waking up. It begins small, like a tremor under the surface, but it grows stronger each time you choose alignment over approval. So tonight, test your stillness. Say nothing when you would normally rush to explain. Let the discomfort rise and meet it with breath. That is the edge between your old self and your sovereign one. The queen holds the boundary. The witch holds the truth. The priestess holds the silence. Together, they form the trinity of wholeness, the healed feminine who no longer betrays herself for belonging. She is not chasing peace anymore. She is peace. And that is the kind of serenity that unsettles the world. There is a moment in healing when peace stops feeling like stillness and starts feeling like truth. When she no longer mistakes the absence of conflict for safety. When she realizes that silence, once her prison, has become her crown. But before peace, there is rage. Not the chaotic, vengeful kind, but sacred rage. The kind that arises when a woman finally understands how much of her life was built upon her own self-abandonment. This rage is holy. It burns not to destroy, but to cleanse. She begins to see the cost of every compromise. How her voice was edited to fit the comfort of others. How her compassion was used to absorb the consequences of their avoidance. How she called it love when it was actually self-erasure. And yet, she does not hate them for it. Because now she sees the deeper truth. She participated in her own diminishment, not out of weakness, but out of devotion. Every time she betrayed herself, she was trying to stay alive inside a world that punished authenticity. But survival is not the same as living. And the body remembers the difference. This is the phoenix archetype rising, the moment when destruction becomes birth. Her old identity, built upon compliance, begins to crumble. The ashes are heavy with memory, but within them glows the ember of truth. The phoenix does not ask to be understood. It does not apologize for the fire. It knows that everything real can withstand the burn. He watches her now with a strange awe. The woman he once knew, the one who softened herself to soothe his insecurity, no longer exists. In her place stands something unyielding yet graceful, warm yet untouchable. She still loves, but she loves differently. Her love no longer flows from fear, it flows from choice. To the unhealed masculine, her new presence feels like loss, because his worth once depended on her self-forgetting. He might try to guilt her back into the old patterns. You've changed. You don't care anymore. But she smiles gently, sadly, because she knows now. Change is what happens when truth finally takes root. This is the reclamation of inner authority. For the first time, her nervous system no longer orbits around someone else's moods. She no longer edits her words to avoid rejection. She no longer performs lightness to be likable. She no longer confuses harmony with submission. This is what sovereignty feels like, terrifying at first, then intoxicating. Because once a woman tastes self-loyalty, even once, she can never unlearn it. The world will call her detached, arrogant, mysterious. But what they really mean is, she no longer serves our comfort. And you who are listening, you know this feeling too. That subtle tremor when you start choosing yourself. The guilt that follows, whispering you're too much, too selfish, too cold. But that guilt is not truth, it is residue. It's the echo of a system built on your compliance. So listen not to guilt, but to the stillness beneath it. That stillness is your compass. Every time you return to it, you reclaim a piece of your power. Tonight, let yourself remember what your body knew before the world told you to forget. Place your hand over your heart and ask, where have I abandoned you the most? And wait. Do not rush to answer. The truth does not shout, it waits for your readiness. As you listen, you may feel grief rise. Let it. Grief is the bridge between the woman you were and the woman you are becoming. And when the tears fall, know this, you are not breaking down, you are breaking open. Because the phoenix does not rise in silence. It screams, it burns, it sheds every false identity. And when the ashes settle, she stands not polished, not perfect, but whole. He may never understand what transformed her. He may call her distant, but she is not gone. She has simply gone inward, to the only place that was ever truly hers. In that space, she no longer seeks validation. She embodies it. She no longer needs to be chosen. She chooses. And every step she takes from this moment forward carries one vow. Never again will I betray myself for belonging. Because the woman who honors her truth cannot be abandoned, she carries home within her. There is a rare quiet that comes after the burning. Not emptiness, but spaciousness. The kind of stillness that holds the sound of new beginnings. She is different now. Not louder, not colder, but clearer. Her energy no longer leaks through the cracks of compromise. It gathers, deliberate and grounded, like morning sunlight on stone. This is the final stage of integration, when survival transforms into sovereignty. The oracle archetype emerges here, the woman who no longer reacts but perceives. She speaks little, yet her words carry weight. She no longer reaches for understanding, she embodies it. Her power is not in what she does, but in what she no longer needs to do. She understands now that betrayal of self was never a moral failure. It was instinct. It was the psyche's attempt to preserve connection in a world that punished truth. She forgives herself for every silence, every pleasing, every shrinking, because she sees the innocence in it. Shame dissolves when compassion replaces judgment. In Jungian terms, this is individuation fulfilled. The one split self becomes whole. Light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, power and tenderness, no longer at war but in union. She no longer oscillates between extremes. She moves with balance, the divine marriage of her inner masculine and feminine. He senses this shift too, but cannot name it. Her presence disarms him now, not because she withholds, but because she no longer seeks to be seen. She doesn't play the game of attraction and validation anymore. And in that detachment, she becomes magnetic. Because nothing is more alluring than a woman who does not need to be desired to know her worth. She is not proving anything. She is not defending her silence. She is simply being, and that being radiates authority. To the unhealed, her peace looks like mystery. To the awakened, it feels like home. You see, this is what healing truly means, not perfection, not endless light, but the ability to stay rooted when your shadows speak. It is the strength to hold your truth without apology. It is the tenderness to forgive the parts of you that once had to hide. She remembers now. The good girl was not wrong, she was scared. The witch was not dangerous, she was awakening. The queen was not proud, she was reclaiming. The priestess was not distant, she was listening. The phoenix was not ruthless, she was reborn. And the oracle is not untouchable, she is complete. In her stillness, she can finally love again, but differently. No longer from need, but from abundance. No longer to fill a void, but to share a fullness. She loves as a choice, not as a plea. And love, when chosen freely, becomes devotion, not dependency. If you are here, listening, feeling that ache in your chest, know this. Healing self-betrayal does not mean you'll never feel the urge to abandon yourself again. It means that now, when the urge arises, you will pause. You will recognize it as an echo from an old life that no longer fits. And you will choose differently. That is the quiet revolution of awakening, not a battle, but a remembrance. Not fire this time, but light. So tonight, as you sit in your own silence, place your hand over your heart and whisper, "I am loyal to me now." Feel how that sentence lands in your body, heavy, sacred, irreversible. Because when a woman becomes loyal to herself, everything that is false falls away. She no longer chases what was never meant to stay. She no longer negotiates her worth in the marketplace of validation. She no longer begs love to see her because she is love, embodied and awake. The cycle ends here. The lineage of self-betrayal breaks with her. And from her wholeness, a new feminine rises, one who does not seek to be saved or worshipped, but to be. The woman who once betrayed herself for survival has become the woman who lives for truth. She has walked through the fire, sat in the ashes, and now stands in her stillness, radiant, rooted, real. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.